What is up, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls? It's your boy Goblin, and today we're coming in with a banger of a video, a true hoot and a holler. But before we dive into it, I just want to say real quick, thank you all so much for the support on the recent videos. We've been cracking a ton of views every single week. It's been incredible. It's really been awesome. So thank you all for the love. I just want to say that. I really do appreciate it. I'm not going to waste any more time here because we've got a story today, ladies and gentlemen. And in this particular story, we're talking about some of the worst weed that I smoked that came from one of the sketchiest plugs that I ever copped from. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Drop a like if you do. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Honestly, I feel like most of you guys know the intro by now. I mean, this shit's like clockwork. Let's just dive right into it. Now, this one took place back in early 2020, which was a very interesting point in my life. You see, at this point, I had just moved 3 hours south of my hometown to an area where I knew basically nobody except for my two roommates who decided to up and bail on me in the middle of the night one time, leaving me basically stranded in an unfamiliar town with a bunch of strangers. So at this point, I was really flip-flopping trying to find a plug because, yeah, weed had just gotten legalized in my home state, Illinois, and I was 21, but I think we all know by now that the dispensary was not really the plug in Illinois. I mean, the taxes were ridiculous. They were selling eighths for $70 before tax. I mean, it was terrible. So I still needed a plug at this point. I didn't know anybody. So I was bouncing around pretty much every single time I re-upped. It was from a different individual at this point. And I'd say my entire time I lived in this town, I lived in Springfield, I never once found a consistent plug that I grabbed off more than a handful of times. Now, on this particular day, I texted a girl who we're just going to refer to here as Ashley, a name that I'm sure many of you have heard on this channel before. I reached out to Ashley, and Ashley was someone who would always be able to refer me to a plug. I don't know how she did it, but she just had somebody. She knew the town, you know? She was also my landlord at this point, you know? So I hit her up. I'm like, hey, you know anybody who's got a plug? She refers me to someone else, one of her friends who's not a plug, but her friend has a plug. She's like, oh, yeah, hit up Ashley, too. Ashley, too. Hit up Shorty Johnson. She's got a plug. Hit up Shorty Johnson. Shorty Johnson's like, oh, I have a plug for you here. You know, just give me a second. I'll send you his info. Instead of sending me his info, 2 seconds later, I get a text from a random number. It's like, yo, like, what's good, bro? I heard you needed some stuff. Like, my name's, well, we'll call him Terry for the sake of this video. He's like, yo, what's good, bro? My name's Terry. Like, let me know what you need. I'm like, okay, all right. This guy actually, he took the prerogative. He reached out to me first. That's something I'm not used to. I like that. Okay, let's see what Terry's got. So I start texting Terry back. I'm like, listen, bro, my stash is dry. You know, I've got like $100 to spend. You know, I'm trying to get a decent bit. I'm trying to get like maybe a half, you know, depending on what you got. Like, what do you got for me? Let me know. One thing that I wasn't really accustomed to in this area as well is $100 was like zip money in this area. Like, that's ounce money in the town I had moved to. Where I came from, 100 was like a half ounce if you were cool with the plug, you know? Now I moved to a town where 100 is the zip, buddy. So I was still kind of getting accustomed to that. I threw out the $100 thinking like, I hope that's enough. And I didn't realize that this guy, Terry over here, was probably like, this is a primo custy. This is my biggest client of the day, you know? So Terry, he's like, oh, yeah, bro, I got you more than a half ounce for that, for sure. No problem, dude. Come on through. He sends me this address. And all right, listen, dude. I should have known off the address something wasn't right here. It's one of those addresses where it's not just like a normal address. There's not a number in front of a street name or anything. It's one of those ones where they got like the direction in it. It was like 1NW2E, like some crazy shit on a road that didn't appear to be a real road. And I maps to it, and this guy's like 30 minutes out of town in the fucking sticks, dude. It looks like this guy just sent me the location of a campground, and he's gonna be there waiting for me in a tent. So I'm sitting there, I'm like, all right, well, I'm getting more desperate by the day. I mean, I had gone through plug after plug in this town at this point. I had re-upped from a lot of people. I was honestly bothering my landlord with questions about plugs probably every other week. It was bad, okay? My landlord lore is a whole nother story, by the way. We won't get into why she was helping me with plugs, but she was a viewer, essentially, is what we'll chalk that up to. But that's irrelevant to this story. Either way, back on topic here. So, Terry sends me this address that's just in fucking Narnia. Absolutely in the sticks. And at this point, listen, I had no license. My shit was suspended. I'd gotten a DUI fairly recently. I had no insurance, obviously, because I was unlicensed. Nobody was willing to insure me. And they're not gonna, who insures a driver with no license? What are you driving? So obviously that's not going to happen. Then on top of that, I still had to get there. I had no money for Uber. This money that I was about to spend on weed was my net worth. I was broke at this point in my life. If I recall correctly, I think around this time I was lucky to be making $3,000 a month. I was making more so around like in the 2,000 range, but my rent and my bills added up to, pretty close to $2,000. Pretty close to $2,000 after I paid the internet, after I paid the power, after I paid the rent, after I paid everything. My rent was $1,100 in this house. The house prior was $650, which was cheaper, but it was so derelict I just couldn't do it any longer. I had to move to the $1,100 house. And I was poor, man. So this $100 was really genuinely like important to me at this point. And I'm like, fuck it. I'm just going to hop up in the whip and get out, because at this point I still had a Volvo. I had a Volvo 240. It was an old one. It was like a 19, oh man, it was 80s. I think it was 89, if I remember correctly. I don't know. I don't remember the years, but it was just this white, boxy four-door. I didn't have the hatchback. It was the sedan, the ski rail on top, those soft, yellowy cloth seats. Honestly, one of my favorite cars I've ever owned. It only lived for like 6 months, and then it just died on me, but it was a good 6 months. And this thing, it was a trooper. It made it from point A to point B for me, no problem. So I jump up in the whip. License plate, not mine. License suspended. Insurance, not there, okay? And I'm off to the races. I back out of my driveway, and I got a good 30-minute drive over to Terry's crib, And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, damn, this is really out of the way, bro. Like, I don't even know where I'm going. I hope I still got service over here at Terry's, because I don't know how I'm gonna maps my way back or anything. There's no outlet in my fucking car. This thing's from 1980, so I can't charge my phone in this bitch if it dies. Uh-oh, I hope shit goes right. Also, at this point in my life, I was off of Xan pretty much every day. Not even like to get high, but just as a casual. I was taking Xans like a script at this point in my life. I would wake up and just pop a bar, not even to get high or anything, but just to kind of get the day going for me, to get me out of bed, get it cracking a little bit. I was the worst kind of addict at this point, but either way. So I'm out here on the roadway. They let a menace onto the streets, and I'm cruising over to Terry's crib, and it's a nice little drive. There wasn't anything wrong with the drive. I wasn't getting followed by a cop or anything. It was nice and relaxing. Cruised on over. I remember it was early in the morning, dude. It was bright and early, dude. It was literally 9 a.m., I think, and I was rolling to this dude's crib. I used to wake up so fucking early, dude, because I had nothing better to do. I was just getting high all day. I'd pass out fucked up at 6 p.m., wake up at 5 a.m., 6 a.m., and just keep pushing, dude. But then sometimes I'd get so caught up in that I'd keep falling asleep earlier and waking up earlier, yet my schedule would reset itself. Then all of a sudden I'd fall asleep at 2 p.m., wake up at 2 a.m., then the next day fall asleep at noon because I woke up at 2 a.m., wake up at fucking midnight. All right, and then eventually it kind of gets back to normal. I had this endless just rotation where there was no real sleep schedule. It was just the drugs dictated when I was conscious, But either way, so I finally get close to Terry's, and I'm a little confused as we're getting close. I'm close enough on maps where I don't have to zoom out anymore to see the destination. I can see it, and I'm like, wait, this isn't making me pull into a neighborhood. This is literally it's just a green rectangle I'm driving into. Maps doesn't even recognize that there's any buildings here. I'm like, okay, is Terry about to rob me? Did I just drive 30 minutes out of town to get fucking robbed at gunpoint? I'm trying to buy some weed. I pull into this little dirt road thing. It wasn't a fully paved road. It was this little dirt kind of easement. Pull into that, right? there's these little like metal gates that are open, right? They're swung open, but you can see one of them has like a chain lock on them. So clearly they lock this place up sometimes. I pull in, and there's just this row of trailers. And I'm not talking like a full-on mobile home. I'm talking RVs. Like this is like Slab City. Someone decided to just create like a sovereign empire out here in the middle of a field, and it just consists of tweakers in broken down RVs. I was bewildered when I pulled into this. I was like, yo, where the fuck did they send me to? First, I couldn't even believe that Maps actually took me here. First off, I was actually genuinely shocked that Maps even took me to this destination with the address he gave me. What address do you provide for this? This is a dirt road. This is clearly not registered with Google. They have never spoken to a Google employee about getting on Maps. I'll put my life on it. So I'm just kind of sitting here in my car, and I don't know, I don't want to get out. Like, I don't really know what to do. There's these like 6 trailers just sitting there, kind of surrounding me. I almost feel like they're about to come alive and extort me or something. So I call Terry, and I'm like, hey, man, like, I just pulled in, you know, where should I park? He's like, oh, like, just park in front of the brown one. And there was one particular trailer that was painted brown. So I was like, okay, all right, I'll pull right up. I pull in front of Terry's trailer. I jump out the whip. He opens the door, comes outside to greet me. Now, Terry is, honest to God, exactly who I expected to come out of this trailer. This dude, I remember he came out in this fucking t-shirt. It wasn't a tap-out shirt, but it was like, it had the font. Like, it looked like a knockoff tap-out shirt or something. And it was like, it had clowns on it. It almost reminded me of like Insane Clown Posse merch, whatever that would look like. He had the craziest, and like 3 sizes too large, mind you, t-shirt. Pops out in that shit, jean shorts. Let me tell you, first off, it's like March in Illinois at this point. I remember it was early in the year. It was not jort weather. I mean, there's never a month or season when it's jort weather, but like, bare minimum, save that for like June, July, August, dude. It's March. This boy is outside in jorts with like a tap-out shirt 3XL over it. Pops out, I'm like, holy shit. I don't remember the kicks, but I'd probably bet money they were Osiris. Terry pops out, and I'm just like, holy fuck. I think what made his shirt look so much bigger, too, is Terry is not he was not a big guy at all. Terry was a thin dude, bro. I remember he was skinny, bro. He was a skinny guy. So Terry pops out. He's like, hey, what's up, man? You know, I park my whip. I jump up out the whip. Honestly, at this point in my life, my car blended in perfectly. I looked like I belonged here, too. Like, I could have just settled down. I could have moved into the trailer next to him right then and there. No problem, dude. Would have been awesome. So Terry invites me inside. He's like, yeah, bro, like, come on in. You know, I walk up in his trailer. I will admit, surprisingly nice. I actually judged a book by its cover a little bit. I could see there was like a back bedroom, and the bedroom was definitely not nice. But you know what? I got the vibe that Terry actually cleaned up before my arrival. And that was a good sign. I was like, okay, well, wait a minute, dude. Terry might actually care. Terry might give a fuck. This might really be the GOAT. You know, this might really be Himothy. So I'm like, okay. I go sit down on this little couch, and it's not like a full couch. It was like this bench. It was like a very thin cloth cushion over it, and it was like a bench with a table in front of it. And then I was just facing the kitchen. Like, I was just looking at this guy's like electric burner and like microwave, you know, but it was kind of cozy, bro. It wasn't dirty or anything, even though the outside of the trailer was derelict. I probably should have added this detail sooner. The trailer was missing all of the wheels. I don't know why I keep calling it a trailer. It was not a trailer, it was an RV. Like, it had a driver's seat. A steering wheel. You could drive this thing. Problem is, there was no wheels on it. Literally none. This thing was on rocks, dude. So, I don't know where the fuck this thing was going, dude, but like, nowhere anytime soon. For surely. So either way, I have a seat. And Terry kind of dips out for a second. He dips into the like back room. He comes back. And he just throws this fucking mason jar down in front of me. It's this giant, like, honest to God, probably the biggest. I didn't even know they made a mason jar this big. I don't know how much weed was in this thing. Probably more than a QP. Like a large amount of weed was in this jar. And he just throws it on the fucking counter. He just puts it right in front of me. I'm like, okay, dude, I've never met you before, and you're just like dangling an HP in front of my face. I just pulled up in a car that's worth less than this jar. Like, dude, you're lucky I'm not still a terrible person, because 3 years ago, I would have tucked that shit under my arm and ran out the door like Adrian Peterson, dude. I would have been gone. You see, at this point in my life, even though I was still a raging drug addict and everything, I had still done some growing up. I definitely had more morals at this point than I did when I was in high school. In high school, I literally robbed one of my friends for $10. $10. That's it, dude. We bought a 10-cent, one blunt, and that was gone. Okay, and then I had to sit with the reality of what I had just done. Either way, back on topic here. So Terry busts out this jar. This weed was fucking terrible, dude. All right, I'm not gonna hold you. This weed sucked. Okay, this shit, it was barely trimmed. I was getting the vibe that Terry might have been growing this shit in the trailer over from us, like literally the next door one, because I had also seen nobody else. There was 2 cars there, if I remember correctly. There was a couple cars. There was not as many cars as trailers. Terry was the only person I saw there. Honest to God, he was probably growing this shit in the trailer over by the looks of it. And now that I've seen a lot of grows in my day and seen what, homegrown shit looks like, yeah, dude, Terry was almost certainly growing that shit in the RV over. But either way, I busted open the jar and I was like, well, fuck, dude. I mean, I got $100. I literally just had a crisp $100 bill in my pocket. I was like, what'll you do me for $100? Terry's ass was like, I'll give you 3/4. I remember thinking that was a very strange amount. I was like, what's your math on that, Terry? How'd you arrive at 3/4? Like, am I getting undercharged or overcharged? Because there's no way someone hits you for a fucking quarter, someone hits you for a quad, and you're like, yeah, that's $33.33, Terry. You're not saying that to your customers. So where am I? Did you give me a discount, or did you overcharge me? Is it 30 for the eighth, or do you charge 30 for 40? Like, what's going on here? What's going on here, Terry? Either way, though, I was not complaining about that, because honest to God, that was way more weed than I thought I was going to get from this guy with the money I had. Instantly, I was just like, bet, dude. Terry did not scale any of it. This guy literally grabs a plastic bag out of the cabinet, just stuffs it. Dude. Probably gave me more than 21 grams, I would guesstimate. However, I would also guesstimate that 20% of that was sugar leaves. It literally looked like this guy just plucked this weed off the plant, hung it to cure, and just immediately threw it in the jar. Did not trim whatsoever. Trimmers on vacation in Bora Bora. Can't be reached. I also don't know if he ever told me a strain, which, to be fair, I didn't ask, okay? I didn't give a fuck, dude. I just wanted to get high. But I don't think he ever told me a strain. I do remember after he tossed me the bag, being a little taken aback by how stuffed it was. And I remember asking him, I was like, well, shit, bro. Like, you got any other stuff? Like, I'll definitely come back. And he's like, yeah, man, for sure. Just give me a call. I'm usually around. He kind of shoos me out the door, not in a rude way or anything, but just kind of tells me, like, hey, it's time to go. I dip on out, I jump back in my Volvo with my fat bag of boof, and I drive back to the crib. Now, I had smoked none of it yet, and obviously it didn't look good, but I've also dealt with bags where they just needed some hand trimming, and then it was actually some good smoke. So I wasn't too concerned yet. I was still at the point of like, wow, I just got a great deal. So I drive on home. I whip back to the crib. Once again, a nice chill road, mostly back roads. I was never on the highway or anything, and I make it back home. I run back inside. I remember I immediately gut a Swisher Diamond, roll up a blunt. At this point in my life, I was still smoking blunts. My God, I'm so glad I quit. And I sparked that bitch up. Now, let me tell you guys something. Before I rolled up and before I ground any of this weed, I spent a good amount of time hand trimming. And the first thing I noticed was this weed was literally so moist that I had to go wash my hands before I could actually roll the blunt. I'm not talking about it was sticky. That's different. This was moist. Like my fingers were almost damp. Like I just walked out of a swamp or something. It was a very, very concerning feeling, to say the least. Your weed's not supposed to be moist, So I'm like, okay. Clearly, this is not good. I realize now, looking back, it was not cured correctly. But at the time, I was stupid. I didn't know anything about weed. So I was like, all right, whatever. Wow, this is sticky. Whatever. Must need a trim. So I trim it. I grinded up the best of my ability. It did not grind very easily or very well. It was very chunky, but I did it, okay? And I start rolling up my blunt. And I spark it up. You know, I twist it up pretty fast. I spark it up. Immediately, we got a campfire. We got Rice Krispie treats, okay? Snap, crackle, pop, make a wish, okay? Now, I don't know why I did this, but for some reason, I just believed in Terry. I don't know. It wasn't even like we got along particularly well or anything, or I knew him, because I didn't really. But I couldn't believe it. I was at the kind of my breaking point, I'd say, here, where I was just so tired of buying endless garbage weed from these random local plugs that this was one of those moments I almost crashed out, dude. I was like, no, it can't be the Terry weed. It must be my blunt. Surely it's my blunt. Let's go get a bong. So I went upstairs and I grabbed my bong, okay? And I, at the time, didn't have any real, like, nice, notable quality bongs. All of my stuff was smoke shop garbage or junk that I was sent by a sponsor, which also was typically smoke shop garbage, if we're being real. I remember there was one brand in particular called, like, Everything 420 or some shit, who had sent me a bunch of fucking hoopla. They sent me a bunch of just boo-boo, right? I was like, fuck it, dude. All right, you know, I'll keep these bongs. I don't even think I ever did the promo. Looking back at it, I think they sent me bongs and asked me to post them, and I just kept that shit. I was on demon timing. I was up to no good. Either way, so I have these cheap China bongs, and I went and I grabbed one. I brought it back down, and it was, I mean, probably disgusting. I don't remember the state it was in, but I didn't really regularly clean my pieces at this point either. Brought it back downstairs, packed a bowl up of our Dookie Snap Crackle Pop. Now, I was really in my head genuinely expecting a smooth hit. I was like, no, dude, it just needed a trim, dude. I've hand trimmed it. Terry seemed like a good guy, you know, whatever. The stuff smelled solid too. I mean, it wasn't all lost here, you know, like, I mean, sure, it was a little musty smelling because of the moisture, but through that even, there was a nose, you know? So in the back of my head, I was just hanging on for dear life. I was like, please don't tell me I got fucked again with a giant bag of Boofington, okay? Because, I mean, I was really at my wit's end. It was like, listen, one more bad bag of weed, and I'm going and flipping that whole trailer, dude. But I pack and I take my bong rip, and I remember this was one of the most egregiously bad bong rips I've ever taken. I feel like a bong is probably the best way to gauge how good your weed is. If you can just completely snap a bowl and it's totally smooth, you've got some good shit on your hands. This, I could barely even smoke half the bowl. I remember at this point in my life, to save my weed, I was smoking half bowl. So I'd only hold the lighter up to half of it at a time because I was like, fuck, dude, I was kind of poor. I need to save my weed. So I was like, fuck. So I smoked my half bowl, and I remember just immediately the grossest, thickest yellow smoke just filled my bong. It was almost like the smoke was immediately stale. It never had a point of freshness. It was just disgusting, and I remember I inhaled it. Immediately, my body rejected it. Like, it wasn't even like I coughed. No, my whole body physically rejected this bong rip. I'm talking like I collapsed, dude. I remember I needed fresh air. I went out, I opened my back door, and I remember I'm standing on my back deck, and I'm literally just coughing a fucking lung up. There's drool running down my face. There was snot coming out of my nose. I was coughing so hard. The wilderness was just consuming me. I was looking around, you know, at the grass, the birds, everything around me. I was like, dude, I'm about to fall over and die and become a part of this right now. I'm going back to my maker. It was one of those coughs where it just felt like no matter how much I coughed, nothing was able to come up. I wasn't moving anything around, and it felt like my airways were closing. It was almost like I was having an allergic reaction to this weed. It was so terrible. It was abso-fucking-lutely brutal, okay? Now, after this bong rip, I remember I recovered. It took me a little bit. I came back inside, and I remember I was sitting there. I didn't even smoke the blunt. I remember I put that shit out when I grabbed the fucking bong. Never picked that blunt back up. Now, I don't remember what I did with the entire rest of this bag of weed. If I'm being honest, I probably still smoked some of this shit. For sure, I still smoked a few more blunts or whatever I could have of this. I mean, it was still better than nothing. I was like a little bit high, but I think it was mainly just kind of a placebo of like the lack of oxygen giving me a head rush from coughing a lung up, you know? But I remember after this, I sold the rest of this bag to a fucking Uber driver, dude. There was one time where I was Ubering up to Peoria, and for those of you guys who don't know, Peoria is like a long Uber. That's like, well, comfortably over an hour from Springfield, I'd say. If I remember correctly, it was like an hour and a half about, I think, give or take. Either way, though, I was in an Uber to Peoria, and I sold the Uber driver the rest of this fucking weed. He was just like some old head kind of dude. I feel bad about doing this. If you're still listening to this, man, I'm sorry. I don't even remember your name. I just remember specifically selling him the weed because I was literally Ubering to Peoria with the rest of the bag that I had on me. I was about to match a homie with it. And instead, I ended up with some extra cash to buy some better weed. It was the luckiest, like, fate moment ever. But Unc, if you're out there watching, my Uber driver, wherever you are, dude, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have served you this shit. I don't even remember it. I feel like it was a decent while after I bought that bag, too. Like, it was like a few weeks at least after I bought that bag. I went, maybe a month, that I actually served it to this guy. Which I don't think that's ever full video worthy, the Uber driver story. It's more so just a small little tidbit. It was a very normal Uber ride outside of that. He was letting me hit my cart, which is how the conversation of buying weed came up. But I'm getting carried away here. That's a whole nother shindig, isn't it? Either way, this was some of the worst weed I ever fucking smoked. And needless to say, Terry did not get a call back. Thank you all for watching this video. I hope you all enjoyed. Drop a like if you haven't already. Subscribe if you haven't already. I'll see y'all in the next one. Deuces.